Lewis Hamilton has just shaken the entire Formula One world. Moments after crossing the line in Brazil, his radio exploded with one sentence that echoed across the paddock. "These guys are a joke, a complete joke." You could almost feel the frustration through the static. But this wasn't just a driver blowing off steam after a rough race. It was the breaking point of something much deeper. A seven-time world champion, tired of feeling that no matter how hard he fights, the system meant to keep things fair keeps letting him down. It all started with a glimmer of hope. Brazil was supposed to be his reset, a weekend where Ferrari could finally fight back, and where Hamilton might escape the cloud that's hung over him all season. But instead of redemption, the race spiraled into chaos. First corner contact, a clash with Franco Colapinto, a damaged front wing, and then the moment that tipped everything over. A 5-second time penalty for causing a collision that Hamilton swore wasn't his fault. As that penalty flashed across the screen, you could sense it. This was different. His voice cracked over the radio, not with confusion but disbelief. Years of composure gave way to raw honesty. "These guys are a joke." And just like that, Hamilton's relationship with the FIA hit its lowest point in years. But what makes this moment so powerful isn't just the anger. It's the message behind it. Hamilton wasn't just furious about one race. He was challenging something much bigger, a pattern of inconsistency that's been haunting Formula One for years. Every penalty, every unclear ruling, every time a driver is left guessing what's fair and what isn't. And now, one of the sport's greatest voices has finally said what so many have been thinking. Before we get into the details of how it all unraveled at Interlagos, let me ask you, do you think the stewards got it right? Vote right now in the poll. Yes, the penalty was fair, or no, the FIA got it wrong again. And if you love clear, no-nonsense F1 breakdowns, subscribe to Fast News F1 and hit the notification bell. We're pushing toward 2,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference in keeping these stories alive. Hamilton's explosion in Brazil wasn't just noise. It was a warning shot to the sport's governing body. And as we dig deeper into what actually happened during those opening laps, you'll see why that penalty didn't just ruin a race. It reignited a fight that could change Formula One forever. The race started like a slow-motion disaster. Hamilton lined up 13th on the grid, eyes locked on the lights, knowing this was his chance to claw back momentum. But within seconds, it all began to unravel. Into turn 1, chaos erupted. Carlos Sainz, now driving for Williams, dived in aggressively, brushing the side of Hamilton's Ferrari. It wasn't a huge hit, but enough to send him wide. The kind of tap that instantly changes your rhythm and costs you track position. By the time he recovered, Hamilton had already dropped spots. Still, he pushed on, determined to fight back. The problem came just moments later, as he powered uphill toward the start-finish straight. Franco Colapinto's Alpine was ahead, edging toward the racing line. Hamilton went for the gap. He always does. But Colapinto moved slightly across, and the two cars touched. It was a light contact by F1 standards, yet the result was devastating. Hamilton's front wing shattered, sending carbon fiber flying, and the underside of the car took a brutal hit. Within seconds, Ferrari's radio lit up. "Front wing damage, box, box." He dove into the pits, but it was already clear something worse had happened. The engineers later revealed the collision didn't just take out the wing, it tore chunks of the floor, stripping away vital downforce. In Formula One terms, that's catastrophic. The SF-25 was bleeding performance everywhere. Through the high-speed corners, Hamilton was losing as much as 40 points of downforce, a number that turns a race car into a nightmare to drive. From that point on, he was fighting a losing battle. Every lap, the Ferrari slid more, struggled more. You could hear it in his voice, the frustration growing. He wasn't just upset about bad luck. He felt robbed by the penalty that came next. Moments after the pit stop, race control flashed the message every driver dreads. 5-second penalty, causing a collision. For Hamilton, that was the last straw. "These guys are a joke, a complete joke," he snapped over the radio, disbelief cutting through the noise. Now here's where things get interesting. Even among fans, opinions split fast. Some said Hamilton should have backed out. Others argued Colapinto left no room. So tell me in the comments, who do you think was really at fault in that moment? Hamilton for going for the gap, or Colapinto for moving across? Let's see what the F1 community thinks. And hey, if you enjoy this kind of detailed inside the race breakdown, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me bring you more stories straight from the paddock. By lap 39, Hamilton's nightmare was complete. The car had become undrivable, sliding through corners like it was on ice. He described it later as feeling like the suspension was broken. Ferrari made the call to retire the car. Another DNF, another painful weekend, and the spark that would ignite everything that came next. Because what Hamilton said after the race didn't just challenge the stewards. It questioned the system itself. And in the next part, we'll unpack exactly why that 5-second penalty may have exposed a much bigger problem inside Formula One. When you strip away the emotion, the question becomes simple. What exactly did Lewis Hamilton do wrong? The penalty he received in Brazil was for causing a collision, a rule that sounds straightforward but often depends on interpretation. The stewards judged that Hamilton moved into Colapinto without enough space, forcing contact. But here's where things start to break down. The same rule has been applied, or ignored, in wildly different ways across recent races. And that's what's driving Hamilton's frustration through the roof. Think back just 1 week earlier in Mexico. Hamilton was given a 10-second penalty for going off track while battling Max Verstappen, even though several other drivers had similar incidents and escaped without punishment. To him, it wasn't about being singled out. It was about the lack of logic. One race, it's fine. The next, it's a penalty. The FIA calls it case-by-case judgment. But to drivers, it feels like rolling dice on your career. The inconsistency cuts deep, because every penalty changes more than one race. It alters championship points, team strategies, and even reputations. For Hamilton, a driver who's built his legacy on precision, that unpredictability feels like betrayal. He's not asking for special treatment. He's asking for clarity. If two incidents look the same, the outcome should be the same, no matter who's behind the wheel. This debate isn't new. Drivers have quietly complained for years that stewarding lacks transparency. There's no detailed explanation, no replay footage shown from multiple angles during rulings, no open conversation with teams after the race. It all happens behind closed doors, and the fans are left guessing. That's why Hamilton's outburst hit so hard. He said out loud what so many inside the paddock whisper, privately. So let me ask you this. Should the FIA be required to publicly explain every major penalty with evidence and reasoning? Imagine if we could actually hear the stewards' conversations or see the footage they base decisions on. Would that make the sport fairer, or just fuel more arguments? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's see where the fans stand. It's worth remembering, the FIA's job isn't easy. Every decision happens in real time, under enormous pressure. But Hamilton's argument is about accountability. The idea that rules should protect fairness, not shape outcomes. He's not just speaking for himself. He's speaking for every driver who's ever walked away from a race, wondering if they were judged fairly. If you agree that Formula One needs clearer, more transparent officiating, hit subscribe and join the Fast News F1 community. We're growing fast, aiming for 2,000 subscribers. And your support helps us keep pushing for honest, balanced coverage of moments just like this. Because as we're about to see next, Hamilton's words didn't just spark outrage. They triggered a wave of reactions from across the paddock that's still echoing through Formula One. The aftermath of Hamilton's outburst hit Formula One like a shockwave. Within hours of the race, clips of his radio message, "These guys are a joke," were everywhere. Social media lit up, with fans and journalists dissecting every word, every replay angle, every steward report. Some backed him instantly, saying the penalty was over the top. Others felt he'd gone too far, accusing him of disrespecting the officials. But one thing was clear. Hamilton had forced a conversation that the FIA could no longer avoid. Inside the paddock, the mood was tense. A few drivers quietly agreed with him, though most chose their words carefully. Nobody wants to be the next one called to the steward's office. Still, whispers started to spread that more and more drivers were fed up with the lack of consistency. Some even admitted off record that they've stopped trying to predict what the FIA will decide, because the logic seems to change from one weekend to the next. Ferrari, for their part, were left deflated. Team principal Frédéric Vasseur called it a weekend to forget, but that phrase has been echoing through Maranello for months now. 2 Ferraris out, 0 points, while Mercedes celebrated a double finish. It felt like insult piled on injury. Hamilton apologized to his mechanics afterward, saying he felt terrible for not bringing home results. But even in that moment, he couldn't let go of the bigger issue: fairness. To him, it wasn't just about one race. It was about trust, the kind that holds the whole sport together. And then came the silence. As of now, the FIA hasn't issued an official response to Hamilton's comments. No public statement, no clarification, just quiet. But inside, sources suggest the governing body isn't happy. They rarely appreciate being challenged so openly, especially by someone of Hamilton's stature. It puts pressure on them to act, or at least to look like they're listening. So here's a question for you. Do you think the FIA will actually respond publicly? Or will they just let this blow over like so many times before? Vote in the poll right now. Yes, they'll respond. Or no, they'll stay silent. I'm curious to see what you think, because this could go either way. Behind the scenes, Hamilton's stance has also stirred admiration. Some fans and analysts are calling it leadership, the willingness to speak up when others stay quiet. They say it takes courage to challenge the system that defines your career. Others warn it's risky, that openly confronting the FIA could backfire in future rulings. Either way, one thing's certain. Hamilton's bombshell didn't just make headlines. It reignited one of Formula One's oldest battles: drivers versus the governing body. If you've been enjoying this breakdown and you want to stay ahead of every twist in this story, make sure you're subscribed to Fast News F1 and have the notification bell on. We're pushing to hit 2,000 subscribers, and your support helps this channel grow and bring you real F1 coverage without the fluff. Because as we head into the final part of this story, the question isn't just what happens next for Hamilton. It's what this moment means for Formula One as a whole. And that's where things get truly serious. Formula One has always been about precision. Every millimeter, every millisecond, every rule written to keep competition fair. But when those rules start feeling inconsistent, when drivers lose faith in the system, the very foundation of the sport begins to shake. And that's exactly what Lewis Hamilton warned about in Brazil. His frustration wasn't just personal, it was a wake-up call. Because if a 7-time world champion feels that the officials can no longer be trusted to deliver fairness, what does that say about the state of the sport? For years, Hamilton has carried himself as one of Formula One's most measured, respectful voices. But this time, he spoke not just as a driver, but as a symbol of what many believe is a growing problem: a lack of transparency between those who race and those who judge. The FIA's decisions don't just decide who wins or loses a race. They shape seasons. They influence careers. One questionable ruling can turn a championship on its head. And in Hamilton's eyes, Brazil was another example of that power being misused or misunderstood. He's not demanding favoritism, he's demanding consistency. The same rules applied to everyone with clear explanations the fans can actually understand. For Ferrari, the Brazilian Grand Prix became a mirror reflecting everything wrong with their season. Lost chances, unfulfilled potential, and a sense that even when they get it right, the system finds a way to knock them back down. For Hamilton, it was another DNF on paper, but a defining moment in voice. A moment where he stopped holding back. Now, the paddock is waiting. Will the FIA respond, review its stewarding system, or quietly move on, hoping this storm fades? Because make no mistake, Hamilton's words have already done damage. They've reopened old wounds from Abu Dhabi 2021, and they've reignited the conversation about accountability, fairness, and the credibility of Formula One itself. So, let me ask you, do you believe this will change anything? Will Hamilton's bold stand force the FIA to rethink how it handles penalties? Vote now in the poll. Yes, change is coming. Or no, it'll be business as usual. And tell me in the comments what you think will happen next. Will we see an apology, a new review process, or just silence? If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of fan this channel is built for. Passionate, thoughtful, and ready for the real stories behind Formula One. So before you go, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Help us reach our goal of 2,000 subscribers so Fast News F1 can keep bringing you honest, in-depth coverage of the stories that truly matter. Because this fight between one of Formula One's greatest champions and its governing body isn't over. Not even close. And as the fallout continues, one thing's certain. The balance of power in Formula One may never be the same again.
You could feel the tension the moment Lewis Hamilton crossed the line in Mexico. His voice over the radio was calm, almost too calm, but every word carried that familiar fire underneath. "That's unacceptable," he said. Not shouted, not emotional, just steady, controlled frustration. And if you followed Hamilton long enough, you know that tone means something deeper than just a lost podium. It was a message, not to his rivals, but to the FIA itself. Because here's what happened. Coming out of turn 2, Hamilton ran wide and rejoined the track cleanly. No overtakes, no contact, no chaos, just a routine recovery that's happened 1,000 times before. But seconds later, word came down. A 10-second penalty for gaining a lasting advantage. The kind of vague phrase that instantly splits opinion in Formula One. And that's where the trouble started. What made it sting wasn't just the penalty itself, but what followed. A few hours later, the FIA's own clarification quietly admitted that Hamilton hadn't actually broken the race director's notes. Their reasoning, that he'd gained an advantage, didn't match the timing data. So if the data said one thing and the steward said another, who was really right? That question exploded across the paddock. Onboard footage told the story most engineers already suspected. Hamilton lost time through that chicane, nearly half a second. His throttle trace dipped, he rejoined behind both Red Bulls, and there was zero proof of any gain. Yet, the punishment stayed. And that's when people started asking whether Formula One's rulebook was being applied by principle or by perception. Now, before we dig into the data that Ferrari released, and trust me, you'll want to see what those numbers show, I want to know your take. Did the FIA make the right call, yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments below and let's see where fans really stand on this one. And hey, if you want fast, clear F1 breakdowns like this, subscribe to Fast News F1 and hit the notification bell. We're pushing to reach 2,000 subscribers and your support makes all the difference. You'll be helping us grow while staying up to date on every twist like this. Coming up next, I'll walk you through the telemetry that completely changes how this penalty looks. And it might just prove Hamilton right. Alright, so let's talk data. Because that's where this story flips completely. After the race, several engineers, including some from Ferrari and even McLaren, quietly reviewed Hamilton's telemetry from the onboard sensors. What they found was hard to ignore. Through the section where the penalty supposedly happened, Hamilton's minimum speed was 8 km per hour slower than Verstappen's on the same lap. His acceleration curve was delayed by nearly half a second. And his re-entry line actually placed him behind where he would have been had he stayed on the racing line. In other words, he didn't gain an advantage, he lost one. And yet, the steward said otherwise. The official report claimed he gained track position. That's the part that has engineers scratching their heads. Because telemetry doesn't lie. It's data straight from the car's sensors. So how did the FIA reach a conclusion that directly contradicts the evidence? Ferrari's own analysis went public the next morning. They even shared sector times comparing Hamilton, Leclerc and Verstappen. In those 500 meters, Hamilton's delta time increased, meaning he was slower than both. And that's why many in the paddock began whispering that this might not have been about lap times or safety, but optics. Formula One, after all, is as much about perception as it is about precision. A car leaves the track, and from the outside, it looks like a shortcut. Clear advantage, but on the data screens, it's the opposite. So when the FIA penalised Hamilton, some wondered, were they reacting to what fans saw on TV rather than what actually happened in the numbers? Even former drivers started weighing in. Jenson Button said during Sky's post-race show, "If we start punishing moments like that, we're setting a dangerous precedent. You can't drive on instinct anymore." That quote hit hard, because Hamilton's career has always been built on racing instinct. So now, we're at this crossroads. The data says one thing, the FIA says another. Which side do you believe? Tell me in the comments. Are you team data or team FIA? I'll be checking what most fans think and maybe even feature your comment in our next video. And remember, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. Your support keeps Fast News F1 growing, and we're getting closer every day to our goal of 2,000 subscribers. So thank you for being part of the community. Next up, we'll go deeper, because the real twist isn't the penalty itself. It's how the FIA justified it behind closed doors, and the unexpected reaction from Mercedes' pit wall that followed. Now, let's bring in Martin Brundle, because his take really cut through all the noise. On Sky Sports, he didn't just comment on the penalty, he dissected it like a surgeon. Calm, measured, but with a sting that left no doubt where he stood. Brundle acknowledged that the penalty was technically valid according to the rulebook, but he didn't stop there. He asked the question everyone in the paddock was thinking. Why is it okay for Verstappen to go off track early in the race without penalty, but Hamilton is punished for a recovery that cost him time? He framed it like this. Formula One isn't just a sport of speed, it's a sport of fairness. And when fairness is interpreted differently depending on who's driving, the consequences ripple far beyond a single race. Brundle pointed out the moral side of the sport, that the rules, when applied inconsistently, reward aggression over caution. Hamilton's safe recovery was punished. Verstappen's instinctive, aggressive drive was overlooked. That's a statement, not just about one penalty, but about how the FIA's decisions affect driver behaviour and team strategy. And here's the thing. Brundle's commentary didn't just resonate with fans. Engineers, strategists, even rival team principals were nodding in agreement behind the scenes. They understood the subtle message. Formula One's governance had just sent a signal that creativity and instinct could be rewarded, while discipline and precision might be penalised. That's a big deal in a sport where split, seconds matter, and the championship is decided by tiny margins. Now, I want you to think about this. If you were in the pit wall, watching your driver being penalised despite all the data showing otherwise, how would you react? Type your answer in the comments. Would you protest immediately? Or would you take a step back and plan for the next race? I'm curious to see what you think. And before we move on, if you're enjoying this breakdown and want more inside takes from the paddock, make sure to subscribe to Fast News F1 and hit the bell. We're pushing hard to reach 2,000 subscribers, and every new subscriber helps us bring you the latest insights straight from the track. Now let's look at the fallout, because this isn't just about a 10-second penalty. Points, momentum, and trust. Before the penalty, Hamilton was on course for a podium finish. That would have meant 15 points for Ferrari, keeping them right in the mix in the Constructors' Championship and maintaining momentum for the season. But with the penalty applied, he finished 8th, only 4 points. That's an 11-point swing in a single moment. In F1 terms, that's seismic, and it goes beyond numbers. Think about it from a team perspective. Engineers plan every tyre stint, fuel load, and braking approach to the millisecond. When the stewards' decisions feel inconsistent, suddenly every risk becomes a gamble. Drivers hesitate, thinking twice before making a move. Teams second-guess their strategies. One misjudged penalty like this doesn't just affect a race, it reshapes the psychology of the entire grid. Brundle summed it up perfectly. If the FIA can't standardise enforcement, then results aren't just earned, they're assigned. That stings because it's true. Teams like Ferrari, built around precision, control and predictability, now face a reality where instinct and improvisation are effectively rewarded. Hamilton's penalty was proof that caution could cost you, while aggression might go unpunished. And here's a perspective I want you to consider. Imagine you're a team principal. You've invested millions in designing a car for stability and precision, and then one penalty tells the driver to take more risks just to compete fairly. Would you adjust your instructions for the next race? Type yes, push harder, or no, stick to the plan in the comments. I'll be watching. I want to see what the real F1 fans think. For Hamilton, the stakes are personal as well as professional. Every hesitation caused by inconsistent officiating can cost him confidence on track, and confidence in F1 is currency. One split second of doubt can translate into tenths lost, and tenths lost can decide a championship. This isn't just theory, it's history. F1 has pivoted before on moments much smaller than a 10-second penalty. So if you're following along and enjoying this breakdown of how one call can change a season, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Every like and new subscriber helps Fast News F1 grow, and we're closer to our 2,000 subscriber goal because of viewers like you. Now, let's look forward. Because the Mexico GP penalty isn't just a moment in a single race, it could be a turning point for Formula One itself. Behind the scenes, teams and insiders have already started discussing procedural reforms. One idea gaining traction is the introduction of independent data auditors to verify stewarding calls in real time. Essentially, this would mean decisions are based on measurable evidence, not perception or quick judgment calls. Hamilton's calm but firm critique, combined with Brundle's public analysis, has turned what could have been a private grumble into a full-blown conversation about consistency and fairness. It's not just about whether Lewis was penalised correctly, it's about whether F1 can trust its own systems to apply rules uniformly. The message is clear. The sport cannot continue relying on instinct when the cars are now streaming terabytes of telemetry every race weekend. The politics are real too. Team principals from Ferrari, Mercedes and McLaren have quietly voiced concern about precedent. Red Bull, as usual, stayed silent. But silence speaks volumes in F1. And for fans, the moment has united opinions across the grid. Regardless of team loyalty, people are asking the same question. Can the FIA be trusted to apply the rules fairly? So here's where you come in. If you could change one thing about stewarding in Formula One, what would it be? Would you back independent data auditors or insist on better defined rules with less discretionary judgment? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know what fans really think about the future of the sport. For Hamilton, the takeaway is principle over points. He didn't want special treatment, he wanted fairness. And Brundle translated that frustration into language the sport couldn't ignore. Together, they've highlighted a systemic flaw, and if Formula One takes it seriously, Mexico 2025 could be remembered not as a scandal, but as the spark that restores credibility to stewarding. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe to Fast News F1 and hit the notification bell. Every subscription helps us reach our 2,000 subscriber goal, so we can continue breaking down F1 controversies, analysing data, and bringing you insights straight from the paddock. And if you found this breakdown useful, give the video a like. It really helps other fans discover these insights too. In the end, Formula One is a sport of precision, innovation, and competition, but it also depends on trust and integrity. Mexico has shown us what happens when that trust wavers, and it's up to the sport to evolve. The data is clear, the debate is alive, and the story is far from over.